Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Next to Madison, I am your host, Madison Malloy, and on this episode, we have a remarkable guest who has created an amazing organization that is called Roots of Peace. And what they are doing is helping remove landmines and build economies through them planting vines in agriculture. It's people like this that are making such an impact and a difference in the world that give us hope and realize that we don't need to be fearful. We need to be faithful. And it is such an amazing story, but also education of how many landmines are actually out there and affecting everyone around us. So please enjoy this interview. And it is just inspirational, amazing. And you're just going to learn of kind of like what's going on and just the difference that each and every one of us can make to make this world a more peaceful and beautiful place. So I hope you guys enjoy. We will be right back after this brief message with our guest, Heidi Kuhn.
Hey, it's Madison Malloy. Just wanted to remind you to make sure you grab a copy of my book, Time to Lighten the Fuck Up. It is a great, funny self-help book that is going to help you get out of your own way. I have already helped thousands and thousands of people, and they are on their way to living their dream life, and I want every listener to be able to live their dream life as well. So grab a copy of the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or even the audiobook on Audible. Now back to the show.
We are back with our amazing guest. We have Heidi Kuhn with us. How are you? I'm so excited you're here and you're going to teach us so much about Roots of Peace and what it is and how you're impacting and changing the world. I mean, you're legendary. So tell us about Roots of Peace.
Well, first of all, Madison, it's such an honor to be on your show. I've followed you for quite some time. So thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of women who have no voice, who live in war-torn countries. And it could never be more important than certainly this month of February, where we are embarking upon the second anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a moment in time where the world needs to fall to their knees to look at what humanity is doing to one another across borders and to seek innovative ways in which we can truly plant the roots of peace on earth now.
I mean, that's amazing. So how did this start? Because I know it's been around for a while. Like, what was the motivation behind it?
Well, Madison, it's so interesting. I'm actually speaking from the living room of our family home. And it happened actually here 27 years ago, almost, when the late Princess Diana had tragically died. Now, I was previously a CNN reporter, producer. I had my own television news company called NewsLink International. That chapter of my life was halted because I was diagnosed with cancer, and with a 1, 3, and 5-year-old at age 30. Nothing will stop you with boots like that. I was reporting in the Soviet Union, actually. So ironic because, you know, we were focusing on perestroika and glasnost and bridging seeds of friendship between two countries in the 1990s when I was diagnosed. But following cancer, I actually gave birth to a child. It was really a miracle child. And from my heart, I saw cancer as a landmine because none of us know when we're going to step on it. And when Diana died and people knew I had a background in journalism, they asked me if I would host these people who were working on the landmine issue in the living room of our family home. Now, in 1997, because she tragically passed away on Labor Day weekend, August 1997, the event at my home was only September 21st, a few weeks later. And from my heart, I lifted my glass and said, may the world go from mines to vines. And it truly came through me rather than from me. There were 100 people in the living room of our home. Because of the connections I had with the international community, I picked up the phone. I called the Consul General of Germany, the Consul General of Norway, Hans Ulla Ostad. And, you have to remember those were times when you didn't do an Evite. You had to call somebody on a telephone and rely upon something called a facsimile machine. So it was arduous to do that, but it was prophetic toast looking back on it that really was an image of turning mines to vines, killing fields into vineyards, blood into wine, and swords into plowshares. And here I am on this journey over a quarter of a century later, now a grandmother of 7. And
Wow.
my children grew up, and I've never, ever been more passionate about peace. 27 years ago, I graduated actually from Berkeley in the 1970s. And when I started Roots of Peace, we didn't have to think in our country about peace. People are like, what are you, a leftover hippie? Or, what are you doing, Roots of Peace? We don't need peace in our world. Everything's just fine. Well, that was 1997. Here we are in 2024. And there are an estimated 60 million landmines silently poised in 60 countries. And whether the boot of a soldier or the sandal of a child, these are seeds of terror sown into the one Mother Earth that feeds us. And Ukraine, as we spoke of, in Ukraine today, over 30% of the country is riddled with landmines. Now, this was a country once known as the breadbasket of Europe, the wheat feeding the people, and the excess wheat would feed North Africa. So when, humanity so unhumanely plants these seeds of terror in the one soil that feeds us, soil and soul are violated. And it's just so imperative that the world wakes up now and realizes that this is a food security issue, because if we keep mining the earth, it takes decades to remove these landmines. It's a very arduous, time-consuming event. If you walked in a minefield, Madison, I tell you, it's the scariest thing you will ever experience, because the flowers bloom. You really want to run through those fields. Children want to repatriate back home, but boom.
So
these landmines hurt, maim, and kill the innocent long after the guns of war have silenced.
So how do they find the ones that are still active to remove them?
Well, again, being a cancer survivor, in January 2000, I made a conscious choice to walk through a minefield. My wonderful husband, Gary, supported my deep conviction to do this, because when you're a young mother in your 30s, and diagnosed with cancer, you don't know if the next year you're going to live to see your babies grow. And what I wanted to leave behind is a legacy for my children, that our footsteps are important. So I went to Dragalic, Croatia. In Croatia, in the year 2000, there were an estimated 1.2 million landmines as a result of the Balkan War. And I remember them asking my blood type before I went in. You suit up and you go with these brave deminers. You follow their every footstep, because if you go off the path, you're at risk to losing a limb or life. And what they do is they go very painstakingly, with a very labor intensive, like a golf stick, right? A pucky stick, and quietly back and forth combing the earth until they hear a beep, beep. They put a stick of dynamite, go back, several hundred yards, and then somebody pushes the button and boom. It's a feeling of elation. You're so thrilled you got one landmine out, but then it's a feeling of despair. It's like, there's 60 million more to go. And I think if I learned anything over the past, 26, 7 years, you can't give up. If we give up, it's the innocence and the children. It takes 8 pounds to detonate a landmine. And I know as a mother, it's the average weight of a newborn child.
Yeah.
And $3 to put in the ground. They're very cheap, indiscriminate weapons of mass destruction in slow motion. And again, it prevents not only the cultivation of fruit and vegetables, but it sows fear into the soil and soul of humanity. And here we are, in 2024. I just can't thank you for the opportunity to share this story, because in America, we don't even imagine what it's like for people in Afghanistan, where I work today, what it's like in mine-affected countries for families to repatriate and, in the spring, putting their shovel in the ground and don't know if that metal is going to detonate the earth.
So are most of these landmines new, or are they years back that are still
Well, the sad thing, unless these dormant seeds are removed, they just don't disappear. In Vietnam, which was the war of my generation, the Vietnam War, in Quang Tri province, the former DMZ, over 80% of the land is still contaminated by landmines, UXOs, unexploded ordnance, and cluster munitions. And in Laos, again, 80% of the country of
my gosh.
Cambodia, when you go there, you see these people without arms and limbs, and this isn't what humans do to humans. Again, long after the guns of war have silenced these seeds of terror in the ground. Now, what Roots of Peace does, which is unique, it's from mines to vines. We focus on the vine aspect. I will always be passionate about the importance of demining. We partner with excellent organizations like the Mines Advisory Group, MAG, and ANAMA. This past May, on Mother's Day, I walked through the minefields of Karabakh, which is in Azerbaijan. And in November of 2020, the war began, and 1.4 million landmines were planted in the last 4 years. And again, this was a beautiful, profound grape growing region in Fuseli, and just for hundreds and thousands of years, provided some of the grapes to make some of the best wines that were actually served at the Kremlin. But it's just so imperative that as we restore the value chain, this is a business model for peace: demine, replant, rebuild. It's got to begin with the world focusing on the importance of demining. Now, a happy story I can share with you, having been to Croatia in January 2000 and walking my first minefield. Today, we can look at Croatia and know it's one of the top tourist destinations in the world. Yeah. And that's because a wonderful vintner in the Napa Valley. I'm born and raised 5th generation San Francisco Bay Area. Wow. And shortly after the surpassing of Princess Diana, armed with only the seed of an idea. I didn't have a penny to my name to do this. I went up to the Napa Valley and I knocked on the door of prominent vintners: Robert Mondavi, Diane Disney Miller, Tor Kenward, the Eric Wente. These are vintners who aren't la-di-da Napa Valley. These are farmers who cultivate the earth and in their art form create some of the best wines in the world. But they understood what it must be like for farmers to have to cultivate their fields with the fear of landmines beneath their plow. So when I invited them to Ottawa, Canada in December 1997 to witness the signing of the Ottawa Treaty to ban landmines, they came. Robert Mondavi sent his Canadian representative. Tor Kenward of Beringer came. Eric Wente, who owned Wente Vintners, got on that plane, and we flew. And we, again, the United States had not signed and still hasn't signed the ban to landmines. But we went as from a humanitarian grounded purpose. And that's what Roots of Peace still stands for today. We don't care about the flag that is flying. It is about the farmer on the ground. That is our focus. And
why do you think the United States hasn't signed this bill?
I don't know. Okay. There are many who advocate certainly for it. China has not signed it. Russia has not signed it. There are many who work on this. The are actively the international campaign to ban landmines, and I actually serve on the U.S. campaign to ban landmines. The team works very, very hard to advocate in Washington. They're doing a great job at that, but I focus mainly on getting the mines out of the ground. And, you know, I do partner. The Department of State does have a Bureau of Political Military Affairs, Weapons Removal and Abatement, and who has contributed, you know, billions of dollars towards demining. So, you know, I think you have to soar with your strengths and do what you can. I don't think, you know, oftentimes the signing of a treaty, you know, is such an obstacle that you know, we have to get to the urgency of getting these mines out of the ground. So after you know, the new millennium, shortly after the next year, we all witnessed the horrors of the 9/11 attacks in New York City, Washington, D.C. And my neighbor here in Glenwood, Lauren Grancolis, actually boarded the Flight 93 from Boston early to San Francisco to tell her husband that she was pregnant with their first child. She was 2 months pregnant, came on an earlier flight, having come from her grandmother's funeral, unexpected, and her flight went down over Pennsylvania. So this is very personal to me. But what do we do? What do we do? How are we as humans motivated to action by these, you know, horrific, you know, touch points in history? Well, Roots of Peace recognize that the grapes were indigenous to Afghanistan, 70 varietals of grapes. And the concept of mines to vines could most easily be applied because it is also the most heavily mined country in the world at that time. Now, tragically, I think Ukraine is a close tie today. We shouldn't be going in that direction. Afghanistan, again, 80% dependent upon agriculture, and conversely was one of the most mine-affected countries in the world. So a deer, again, they're but just angels that have come in, much like, you know, your wonderful colleague, Lynette, you know, who have just come in just at those points of darkness that you think, I can't do this anymore. And they emerge. And this lovely woman, true story, I was introduced to her at an event up in Napa Valley hosted by Erica Hills, the co-owner of Gurgitch Hills Estate. And she said, I want to volunteer for you. May I come to your headquarters? Well, in 2001, that was the basement of my living room of my home, you know, the basement of our family home. And this lovely woman introduced herself as Diane Miller, and she came week after week after week, helping me file papers. You know, unruly little 4 kids would be off at school, and, you know, baby and briefcase, we'd do it in between. And one day she said, let me take you to lunch. Somebody's got to do this. And we went, got a babysitter, went to lunch, and she pulled out her checkbook and she wrote a 6-figure check. And she goes, go turn your minds to vines in Afghanistan. You remind me of Dad.
Wow.
And I looked at her and I looked at the check and I said, Mrs. Miller, I said, who was your father? And she said, I'm Diane Disney Miller. My father was Walt Disney. He knew a thing or two about vision. And you have a vision. Someday you will be out of the basement of your home and turning this vision of minds to vines into reality. So, you know, when I say there are angels that appear, you just don't know who's who when you meet them, but you treat people with respect across the board. And I think that's really the hallmark of excellence.
So when you do the minds to vines, how long does it take to clean up that land so that the vines are not contaminated?
Very excellent question. Well, we began our work with partnership. Again, remember, Roots of Peace does not do the demining. We partner with those who are, you know, highly skilled and trained. We partnered with the UN Mine Action Service, UNMAS, and then the implementing partner on the ground in our initial program in Afghanistan was the Halo Trust. And you may recall the Halo Trust escorted the late Princess Diana through Angola, just, you know, the year that she tragically died. But that moment raised global visibility on the something that I don't really think human people, at least in my community, most people around the world didn't know what a landmine was until Princess Diana took those very courageous footsteps. And it's just a plague. It is like a how do I say? I mean, we look at COVID. It's a pandemic, right? And it's going in the wrong direction, really, right now. That mines are being put in the ground, and as humanity, we're just too blind to see. Again, focusing on Ukraine, 30% of the land is mined. So when we did start in the Shamali Plains, again, arduous task. We removed over 100,000 landmines north of Kabul. And once that land was, cleared and then quality assured, our Roots of Peace team went in. And that was actually led by my husband, Gary Kuhn. You don't do this and then all of a sudden put your family in harm's way. But he was a highly successful businessman, worked 10 years at IBM and went with a little startup called Adobe Systems. And he did Acrobat for them. Again, I remember being at the table and they were trying to connect two mainframes and they said, well, we're walking a tightrope. And my husband was there, in the room with the founders and we said, let's call it Acrobat. So he
cool.
One day came home and said, I've done well. Now I want to do good. How can I help you get out of the basement? So it's really been a mom and pop shop here in many ways. But in Afghanistan, not only did we introduce the trellis grapevines, you prune the vine, you double the yield, you lift these grapes off the ground. When we arrived there in 2002, they were harvesting in the heat of the day, dragging their fresh grapes to market on burlap sacks and expecting a meager profit. Roots of Peace then received funding from USAID in Washington, D.C., unbelievably $6 million. Now, can you imagine? I was toiling in my basement and able to toil in the vineyards of Afghanistan with the proper funding, from my country. And I'm very, very grateful to that for the U.S. from that. But so soon the grapes caught on and went throughout 16 provinces. And then we went down to Kandahar, then introduced the pomegranates, in Helmand, the melons, in Ghazni, Wardak, Logar, these are provinces, the apples, apricots, almonds, and really began to restore Afghanistan as the Garden of Central Asia. Throughout the past 22 years, we have experienced great hardship, many challenges, but as a woman-led organization, I am proud to say that since 2002, we are the longest continuously operating organization in development working in Afghanistan today. And yes, we have impacted the lives of millions of farmers and families. We planted over 7 million fruit trees on former war lands. And you think of taking out a landmine and planting a fruit tree. What does that do? It creates sustainability. The fruit feeds future generations year after year. But however, there's another incredible benefit, and that's when that fruit tree is planted, it creates the carbon credits, the carbon sequestration that restores the lungs of Mother Earth. And if we're going to bring balance to the Earth with the horrific climate disasters that we're witnessing, it's going to be through climate smart agriculture and regenerative agriculture. So Roots of Peace is now taking the lead on renewing the face of this earth with the seeds of hope rather than the seeds of destruction caused by landmines or any other dormant seed sown not only in the soil, but in the soul. Because the hatred in the soil has to also be detonated, and the hatred in our minds, and it needs to be replenished, with, whatever the political landmines or the, or the hatred in our heart or the landmines in our soil. By removing these, they have to be replenished with something we don't often talk about, and that's love.
Yeah, love gets more done than hate.
The power of love, and that's certainly I'm leading with the shovel and not the gun, turning swords into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks, so that nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. That's my battle cry.
I love that. And so I didn't realize that Afghanistan had so many wonderful grapes.
Oh,
I mean, what
nobody,
is that?
70 varietals. Can you imagine?
So
And
is
yeah.
there is the wine they make sold anywhere in the US?
Oh, Madison, that's a good question. I get that from so many people.
Yeah.
But, Roots of Peace is always when we go into a country, we're respectful of the culture. And this is a Muslim culture who doesn't drink at all. So, but what is the fruit of the vine and the work of human hands? A grapevine represents the seeds we have in common rather than those which separate us. Now, Napa Valley, I love a great bottle of wine. However, in a Muslim country, it's raisins and fresh grapes and grape juice. And we're exporting those to new markets in India, Pakistan, Delhi, Dubai. And so by introducing the business model to this, in 2014, for instance, we, the a business model of supply and demand, right? So you have India, which has supermarkets now, a high demand for fresh fruits, but they were too afraid to fly to Afghanistan for obvious reasons of fear of war and risk
Yeah.
of negotiating deals. So what Roots of Peace did is we flew the traders to Gulf Food. And they negotiated deals. They went back home to Afghanistan, and Roots of Peace, with funding from USAID, we were able to put in the first cold storage refrigeration at Hamid Karzai International Airport. So when the farmers harvested their grapes and pomegranates and cherries and beautiful fresh fruits, we taught them to put them in corrugated boxes rather than burlap sacks, and branding and marketing Afghan sweet grapes. And then we put them on the air corridor and sold them to major supermarkets in India, like Big Bazaar and Reliance. What happened there is we took agricultural exports from $250 million in 2014 to over $1.4 billion in 2020. So again, the money that goes back to the farmers, if they can have the dignity to feed their families, and they're not going to go off and sign up with nefarious organizations,
Yeah.
like ISIS and others. They have the dignity. They can feed their families, and cultivating peace through agriculture is a stark reality, one we're not looking at enough in our world. And that's really the voice, and that I really appreciate you taking this time to interview and to amplify, to
Yeah.
interview,
Oh,
amplify.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many people, myself included, had no idea that there was so many landmines and landmines that are left over from wars of generations.
Long ago, and we're watching with blindness as these mines go in not only Ukraine, but look at Gaza. Roots of Peace actually went over there a decade ago. I met with the office of Benjamin Netanyahu and the office of Mahmoud Abbas, went back and forth and negotiated, helped bring forth with a little boy named Daniel Yuval, who stepped on a landmine at age 11. Together, we lobbied at the Knesset and brought forth the first humanitarian demining law. And we took out the mines in the fields of Bethlehem, 4 miles from where Jesus Christ was born, and governed by Israel. So we had Christians, Jews, and Muslims working together to detonate those mines. Now, that was a field where 8 children had died due to the mines that were sown by the Jordanians in 1948. I was so proud to get those out in 2014. But here we are a decade later, and now can't even say it, but more than 8,000 children have been killed. And again, it's not the borders to me; it's the earth that we are witnessing our children being blown up. The atrocities of war are fierce and understandable. How the outrage that attacking a country and the retaliation, but an eye for an eye only creates a blind world. And I think again, across borders, we need to be discussing innovative and grounded ways to get to peace, something that people don't believe in anymore. Roots of Peace is a grounded business model that can, I believe, lift this one world up And I will dedicate my footsteps. I now have 7 grandchildren, my 7 little dwarfs, from those 4 children that I have, and a cancer survivor, now a COVID survivor. And you have to be resilient. You have to learn to overcome obstacles, and you have to be committed towards cultivating peace through agriculture worldwide.
I love it. I mean, you're an angel on this earth and so needed. You know, the thing that makes me angry and concerned is that, you know, you always hear an economy not at war is not making money. And so you have these leaders of all these countries, including ours, that want to be at war. They don't want peace because war makes money. So how do you battle that? And these are the people that you need to approve, but yet these are the people that are pocketing from death and destruction. It makes me infuriated.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'd love to present a business model for making money, because you got to make money. It's not just a pacifist. And I went to Berkeley in the 70s. Peace out, baby. You know, you need to take that peace and dig deeper than ever before. And then you have peace, you know. Berkeley hippie in me.
I love it.
But no, let me give you another example where Roots of Peace is working. We're working in Guatemala, right? And we're also witnessing this incredible surge of migrants coming to our borders, risking their lives, going across deserts infested with snakes, jumping into rivers and drowning. You know, why are they doing this? We need to look at the root cause of outmigration. It's not, the solution is just not building higher walls. It's going to, again, the answer is in the earth, the soil and soul. And so, for instance, a farmer in Guatemala will make an average of $7 a day. They come to the United States, they'll make $20 an hour. And we all have iPhones, right? So you can see, you know, what you can make in an hour, but you don't understand when you get here. You may not have a job. You may be out in frigid cold and rain for months and years, right? Yeah. So Roots of Peace is going to the root cause of outmigration by working with hundreds of farmers in Guatemala. They would make a meager amount just growing one crop, such as coffee. We're introducing a second crop, intercropping with avocado, macadamia nuts, onions. The soil in Central America is so rich. And yet they're coming here for jobs. So we're making prosperous farmers where it's market driven.
I love that.
Introducing them to new markets. And, you know, traditional, mostly Catholic families don't want to leave a family and break them apart from their grandmothers. And they want to stay home and break bread with their families. And it's working. It's working in spades.
It's like, how do you fix the immigration crisis? Well, one of them is try to build up these economies so they want to stay.
And farmlands, exactly. Nobody chooses to be a migrant. Nobody chooses to be a refugee outside of their country. You know, given the choice, you want to celebrate these holidays with your grandparents and your children all together, not worrying that you've sent your oldest child, you know, north of a very dangerous border and sending money back just so they could live, survive, and eat.
Right. You know? And the weather's much nicer down there. So I'm like,
it's gorgeous. I've been there. In fact, I'm going next week. Let me tell you, Antigua, Guatemala. I've been to the highest concentration of outmigration. Their province is called Huehuetenango, Quiche, and San Marcos. That's called the Western Triangle. And it's the highest concentration of outmigration and some of the most beautiful country you ever see. But if the people cannot work the soil, they cannot feed their families. You know, for the grace of God, what would I do? I'd probably be packing up, and there's just a better way. We as a humanity, as a world, we need to come together, look at the macro perspective of what's going on, because our world cannot absorb the number of migrants coming in from all parts of the world. Africa, I'm going to be going to Angola next month. For International Women's Month, I'll be detonating landmines with brave women deminers. And when you ask the women, why do you take the risk of being a deminer? Why would you do this? I always get an American answer. I'm the American asking this, and then I stops me in my tracks when they answer. And then one of them was said to me, Mrs. Kuhn, we have children. The only jobs in a poor area that we can get are prostitution. I
Oh,
am a proud D miner. I suit up every day. I make the land safe for my children to walk, and I don't have to resort to desperate needs and jobs because I am a D miner.
oh my gosh.
That's, that shut me up pretty quickly.
Well, yeah. And just the strength that they have, that there's a bigger
Amazing.
cause and the love of for their child and their friends' children and their peers.
Right. Right.
Um,
And what you're forced to do when you're poor, and you're poor. And
right. So how many do you think landmines are being planted per day in the world right now?
that's a hard question right now. It's countless, really, as we see these wars escalate. Russians and Ukrainians are planting them at the borders. But again, these just don't abracadabra pop out. Look at Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. They're nearly 50 years after the war has ended. People are not looking to the outcome of what happens. So let me give you an example. Since the Vietnam War ended on April 30th, 1975, when I was a junior at San Rafael High School, we were so excited the Vietnam War had ended. But the war isn't done, because since then, over 100,000 innocent footsteps of children and farmers, Vietnamese, have been maimed or killed by the mines left behind, and counting. Every time I again think that I want to get out of this business. I've done it for, 20 odd years. And, I just won the World Food Prize and the Mother Teresa Award in India. My kids go, Mom, you've done it, relax, enjoy the rest of your life. And then I hear a story about another child who lost a limb or life to a landmine. And, that this is not my destiny. It's giddy up, get back on that horse, and let's raise the global awareness of roots of peace, from the heart of the United States to Washington, to New York, to Geneva. Let's ripple this out. It's a spring planting season in front of us like never before, and I truly believe that we have the ability to inspire global citizens. Knowledge is power, and I think when people, through your incredible, Madison, your incredible following that you have, I hope there are a few people who can listen to this and
Yeah.
understand the importance of investing in peace through agriculture.
I just love that because you're covering so many bases with this Roots of Peace. Building up economies and getting rid of landmines and giving them every human being needs a purpose, right?
And hope,
And
hope,
hope.
hope.
Right. So being able to work, and kind of building up their own economies
Mm.
is amazing. I just wish that all these leaders would stop the wars and figure out another way to make money besides killing people. Um,
Agriculture, great way to make money. Great
yeah,
way to make money.
and it,
Yeah.
there's so much, and we need food, and we need healthy food.
Food. We need
Not
food. We need
processed stuff.
tractors. We need
Yeah.
irrigation. We need solar panels. If humanity is going to survive in another 50 years, what we're doing to the soil and overusing it is making it into dirt. And I saw an incredible film on Netflix called Kiss the Ground. It's definitely worth watching. I mean, just to see, a stark reality check of just scientifically where we are as humanity, and the urgent need for returning to the ancient ways. I just was in
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. last week. I had an excellent meeting with many leaders in our government, including Dr. Carrie Fowler, who February 1st introduced an incredibly revolutionary, innovative way to improve the land. It's called VAX. I said, Vision for Adapted Crops and Soil, VAX, Vision for Adapted Crops and Soils. And Roots of Peace is going to be partnering with them again to introduce, go back to the old ways, the ancient ways that we have to go back and learn how to nurture and cultivate Mother Earth. And as we implement these these traditional ways of farming, it provides food security for the future. And we will be hosting a beautiful event in Washington, D.C. On March 26th, and it will be at the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is right across the street from the State Department. Most people have never heard of it. It's just a beautiful building that was created with the vision of Senator Vance Hartke shortly after the Vietnam War. He didn't want to see any more wars unfold. And, this is such a beautiful white venue. And I'm just, focusing on the fact that it's the first week of spring. It's National Women's Month. More women and children are affected by losing their life and limb to a landmine, going to the well, getting water for their family, going into the forest that is now mined to get, sticks and firewood. This is very basic human needs, and what we are doing to the face of this earth. I believe deeply that women, we bear the seeds of life, right? And it's our moral responsibility to uproot these seeds of hatred caused by landmines and to plant the roots of peace with seeds of hope, seeds of life, and they will bloom for future generations to thrive.
I love that. So are there ever because I know there's a place in Colorado where they had so much, there were so many factories, and I forgot what they were doing over there, but it's now the factories have closed down and there's now homes over there. But the way that they have to build the homes, plant the flowers, the earth is contaminated, the ground. So they have to build differently. And I'm like, who in their right mind would ever live here? That is insane. That's like cancer waiting to happen, right? If you can't plant flowers in the ground, I don't think anyone should be living there. I've been to concerts over there, and just standing on the ground, you're like, something is. So do you ever find that land is just completely uninhabitable and there's nothing you can do about it, like certain soils?
Yeah, no. I mean, when landmines are out, the only good thing you can say about the minefield is nobody's been able to get in there and contaminate it with fertilizer, because you'd blow up.
Oh, yeah.
So actually, the solution is demine, replant, and rebuild. And
okay.
Isn't that something? Because, those are questions that, Madison, I've only learned all of this by Braille, by, nearly 27 years of walking the minefields of the world and learning each and every time. I've seen far too much. I've held children in my arms that, picked up what they thought was a rock to fix their bicycle. Little 17-year-old boy in Quang Tri, Vietnam. It was a cluster munition, and it blew up his face and took off his right arm. And I was committed to getting him prosthesis. And when I went back 3 months later, a remote village, he had died, and I have coincidentally arrived at his funeral. So, anyway.
So, I mean,
it's unspeakable.
You're such an angel. I mean, you're risking your own life to help humanity, which is amazing. So, is there anything that does actually scare you? What scares you?
You know what scares me? It scares me not to do anything. That scares me.
I love that.
Scares me.
That's a remarkable answer. Yeah, you're not letting fear stand in your way.
Nope. Fear knocked, faith answered. No one was home.
I love that. Repeat that again. I think that's worth repeating.
Oh, fear knocked, faith answered. No one was home.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So what does success mean to you?
Success in my lifetime would be 30 years from now, taking my great-grandchildren to a former minefield and telling them, once upon a time, humans had landmines in the earth. And there was a moment we got together and really decided to have true peace on earth and to eradicate landmines from the face of this earth. If we can have the intention of putting in, if the world got behind it, by God, we can get all these landmines out of the ground. I want a mine-free world. I want to bring forth the 18th Sustainable Development Goal, SDG, because the other 17 SDGs cannot be accomplished in a minefield. So it would be so amazing and stunning, and the humility, perhaps, of the United Nations admitting that as humans, we sometimes make mistakes. We forgot one. We forgot the 18th Sustainable Development Goal, and that's the eradication of landmines from the face of this earth, because none of the other 17 SDGs can be accomplished in a minefield. You can't educate women. You can't have clean water. You can't do any of the 17 in a minefield. And when, in a world with 60 million landmines in 60 countries and counting, we've got to come to our senses and get beyond the political landmines in our own country and in our world. I wrote a book called Breaking Ground, and the foreword is by Her Majesty Queen Noor. Okay. And on the back, I'm as a fifth generation Californian, and my family came from Scotland to Wiscasset, Maine in 1701. So I'm a daughter of the American Revolution. I'm an American woman. I don't want to be put in one category or another. I'm not from the left coast. I don't know what the right coast is. I'm an American woman. And on the back of my book, somebody who never writes book reviews, she told me, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, and also Ambassador Cindy McCain, and also Dr. Jane Goodall. So to have these women standing up, again, across party lines. Dr. Goodall is supportive of what I'm doing to help the animals, because again, it's 8 pounds to detonate a landmine. Not only the average weight of a newborn child, but a chimpanzee. And think what this does to the elephants. I worked on a project in Angola, and the elephants have these, really sensitive little paws. And, they go along these ancient migration routes in Quando Cabango. Thousands of years, these beautiful elephants have walked along the Chobe River. Boom, a landmine goes off. An elephant loses a limb, and they are naturally very compassionate creatures. So what they do is warn the other herds not to go there anymore. What happens is then they infringe upon the food sources of local villagers. What do the local villagers do? They shoot the elephants, and the whole balance of nature is disrupted. So again, we're trying to take out those landmines, restore the transfrontier, beautiful wilderness area so the elephants can return to their migration routes. People can feed themselves. And in Angola, where I'll be traveling, again, a country 80% dependent upon agriculture and 80% mined. And where Princess Diana walked in Wambo when I was there, these women have these beautiful fresh strawberries on their head, babies, delicious strawberries, pineapples.
Oh my God.
You see people walking around without legs and arms and limbs. We put in a soccer field there in Huambo with pennies for peace raised by my daughter, Heidi Kuhn, and demined the field. And they said, Mrs. Kuhn, come watch. We're all playing on 3 legs. And I'm like, how do boys play on 3 legs? And they said, Mrs. Kuhn, we have 2 crutches and 1 good leg. We can play soccer with our 1 good leg. We have 3 legs, 2 crutches, and a good leg.
Oh my God.
So I've learned so much, and the appreciation and joy and laughter of these young boys playing soccer. And, I brought them over our old, soccer jerseys. They didn't have any that matched. My husband was a coach. I have 3 boys, and, just gave them my leftover matching jerseys from the team from last year, because, here in Marin County, we have to have new jerseys every single but kids who have nothing, I'll bet they're still using those jerseys, whether they're tattered and worn, but it gave them joy. So we have the capacity of humans to bring joy to the world. It's just not an empty phrase, and having demined the fields of Bethlehem 10 years ago, think somebody wrote a poem for me, if I can recall it, because you hear the music. "O Little Town of Bethlehem" is, we're going through the Christmas shopping at Nordstrom's, but they wrote a beautiful poem that went like this: "O little town of Bethlehem, how dare we not demine? Embedded deep, the landmine seep, the scourge of humankind. Yet in the darkness shineth the everlasting light. The hope through fear transcend the fears. We lead with faith, not sight." I did it.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, but the children of Bethlehem sang it this last year. Again, Bethlehem's in West Bank. Look what's
Yeah.
going on there. Again, no judgment who's right or wrong, and war and borders. It's just got to stop. The hatred, sowing seeds of hatred, and it's ravaging in our world today. But I think we need to do something a big game changer, and that's sow the seeds of love, because I truly believe the power of love overcomes the love of power. And
Yeah.
that's the day the world will know peace, as Gandhi said.
I love that. I love that. So where can people learn more about you and donate to your
Yes,
organization?
yes. We're a humanitarian nonprofit organization, and we deeply appreciate the generosity of our donors, our foundations, our corporations for corporate social responsibility, and we're a 501c3 tax deductible donation. Please go to www.rootsofpeace.org. That's www.rootsofpeace.org. And together, may we plant the roots of peace on earth now.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and being such an angel and a real positive change for the world. You give people a lot of hope, including myself. So,
Oh, Madison, thank you so much. And I hope with your dear producer and colleague, Lynette, you're going to see the Big Apple and Roots of Peace. And we have the Roots of Peace, actually the garden that Kofi Annan and Mayor Bloomberg had bestowed to Roots of Peace. It's literally across the street from the United Nations. And in May 2002, shortly after 9/11 attacks, it was bestowed as the Roots of Peace Garden in Ralph Bunche Park. But again, etched in stones, words that are respected in Old Testament, meaning Catholic, Jews, and Muslims alike. May they beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, so that nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. My closing remark.
amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And this is amazing. And you guys go check out rootsofpeace.org so you can learn more and how you can get involved and help. And I'm sure it's more than just money. If you don't have money,
Yes.
contact
Yes.
them and see how you can get involved. And
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Thank you.
That. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's listening. We'll see you next time.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms, and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.